So remember how I said that X5 was supposed to be the last in the X series? Well, judging by the fact I still have a ways to go until I can cover the Zero series, that didn't happen. In fact, after X5, it set up a trend that would lead to the franchise being dormant for nearly a decade. This game was released in Japan almost an exact year after X5, as Capcom instructed the dev team to finish the game right after X5. Personally, this is the first Mega Man game I'm covering that I just straight up dislike. Sure, I haven't been particularly fond of some of the other games I've covered, but those games either have something that keep me coming back to them or are just so bland I don't really have a strong emotion toward them. Since we did it with X5, I'll do it here. The Japanese version of the game plays a vocal track called Moonlight, once again sung by X's voice actor. Since most of this video is going to be negative, I thought it'd be fun to start with the positive aspects of X6. Starting with the story, which is actually somewhat interesting. This game takes place 3 weeks after X6, where the Earth's surface is mostly destroyed. The scientist by the name of Gate finds a piece of Zero's DNA and makes him Maverick. And now with the rage of crashing, a new Phantom of Zero called Nightmare Zero starts wreaking havoc. The scientist, Isaac, notices Nightmare Zero and sends out 8 previously fought dead Nightmare investigators, and a new Reploid by the name of Hymax. X now has to track down and destroy 8 investigators while dealing with the interference of Hymax and Nightmare Zero. After X takes down Nightmare Zero, the real Zero appears after hiding and repairing himself, and they join forces to stop the investigators. The investigators themselves are pretty interesting. For example, Rainy Tightloid was a part of a water purification team. His defensive capabilities were deemed too strong, so Gate was asked to weaken him. The problem is he wouldn't comply, so he was punished. As such, Rainy Tightloid took his own life to not burden his creator, or Commander Yamark, who, yes, is a guy. One day he accidentally set a large portion of the rainforest on fire. While he wasn't actively accused of the incident, one day his flight was sabotaged, leading him to crash and die. I get that people might not come to Mega Man for the story of all things, but in my opinion I very much welcome more story elements in this game. Especially when this game did what I wanted them to do in the previous game. At first she helps I visit him, but then as the game goes on she finds out it is. She also was first to kill Ground Scaravage and Blizzard Wolfang. Now she makes the heroes have emotional stakes with the villain. Even Zero, who has a comic book-esque return, gets something interesting explored. For one, it's very implied that Dr. Light revives him. And 2, his relationship with Isaac is interesting. These are 2 things that I've been saving for videos at this point. There's a lot of confusion on how Dr. Light's pre-recorded messages work. However, by this point, it's pretty much confirmed that these are AI. All these capsules exist in places where it wouldn't make sense for them to be yet. Yeah, you could argue that it's just a gameplay thing, but I do think it helps my argument that it could have always been AI. In X1, we even see a capsule dig itself out of the ground. Dr. Light is also able to keep up with current events. And finally, Dr. Light would be the last person to make various armors for X. What I'm saying is that it's not completely out of nowhere that Dr. Light can just have a conversation with Zero or can repair X and Zero. This is something I never brought up in X2 because I thought it would be better suited here. And I also forgot about it. In the Japanese version of X2, it's heavily implied that Sergeys have the consciousness of Dr. Wily. Well, here it's also implied that Isaac has the mind of Dr. Wily. He's very familiar with Zero's framework, and can even stop Zero if you beat a high max Zero. He's also voiced by the late Takashi Aono, who voiced him in Mega Man 8 and X4. One neat thing is that he also played King Piccolo and Kami in Dragon Ball. Remember just small moments like how when Isaac is talking bad about Zero, X tries to step in. Not only because he's his best friend, but also because he's the reason why Sigma was defeated last time. And then there's Gate himself, who's been obsessed with making Reploids who can't be analyzed like X and Zero. Now that Gate has Zero's DNA, he plans on just wiping out all of humanity and non-advanced Reploids. Yeah, it's a little lazy that he just so happened to revive Sigma too, but there's also a cool implication on it. Sigma in this game has turned clothes and moves like a zombie and can't even form coherent sentences. So it just shows at this point bringing a Reploid this many times is just more trouble than it's worth. I think when you actually pay attention to the story as it was intended, I think you can find some enjoyment out of it. And this isn't where the video stops being positive. This game in all honesty makes a lot of improvements from X5. For starters, X and Zero can gain access to all collectibles. Now you might need a part or two for some sections, but on the whole it's a massive improvement from X5, where Zero was locked out of half of the 8 heart tanks. In this game you can get parts from saving rescuable Reploids. See how like that one section of a Skyverse stage, but now it's in all the levels. X and Zero can equip up to 5 parts, opposed to X5 where you can only equip 4 at max. And in X5 and Extreme 2, X's armors would subtract the amount you can use by 2, and the guy armor can't use any. One of the 5 is a new type of part that will power you up. For example, there's one that can increase your defense, but the one that I use all the time is just the one that acts like a third sub-tank. X now has access to the Z-Saber. Sure, you can't do any of the flippy stuff that Zero can, but it's a good option when enemies get up close. Like the last game, X has 2 armor sets that you can use, the Blade Armor and the Shadow Armor. The Blade Armor has a multi-angle air dash that's invincible, and the Shadow Armor can't use special weapons like the Guy Armor, but doesn't have the mobility disadvantage. It can still survive spikes. Plus it can cling to ceilings like an actual ninja, so that's really cool. Zero also got some pretty massive buffs. For one, the dev team actually took the time to redraw a lot of his sprites. He can do a lot more damage than he did in the previous games, and his Z-Buster is faster and does more damage than it did in X5. If you want to attack from a longer range but still have the option to go up close, you go with X. If you prefer to get close but want an option to shoot from afar, choose Zero. Also, as per usual, the soundtrack of this game is awesome. Overall, I hope you enjoyed me saying only positive stuff about this game. I think the level design of this game is super bad, and in all honesty, it might be the worst level roster I've played in the franchise. At best, the levels are just okay, while at worst, they're like the worst levels I've ever played. So I guess we'll do what I did last time and talk about all of them best to worst. Command Your Mark is just an unremarkable stage that does nothing wrong but doesn't do anything right either. Blizzard Warframe's level is just a meh level, and it has ice physics, but thankfully it doesn't affect the stage at all that much. I will say this falling ice section is pretty fun though. Early Tartland has fine platforming segments, but gets held back by these sections where you have to find these ruined droid thingies. This is where we start getting to the bad levels. Shield Sheldon feels like such a waste of time. This is exactly the same as Vault Kraken's stage, where it has a puzzle that basically solves itself. You don't even really have to think about what type of attacks you do. When doing the main route for this stage, it takes like 2 minutes, which leads me to question what was the point of making this a stage. Infinity Magician is also bad because of how borderline and lazy it is. Have you ever played Sonic Rush? Congrats, this stage is somehow that bit more boring. It's just a straight line of enemies and 2 mini-bosses. I mean, there's a robot in the background, but it's such a non-factor as it just shoots lasers at you, which you can just damage boost through. Gun Scavish stage centers around teleporting from sections in a room. What sucks is that it sends you to rooms randomly, and some of these sections are way worse than others. Items are also in these pathways that I'll repeat are random, but at the very least, you won't need more than like 3 attempts to get everything you want in this stage. Now to the stages that are straight up awful. Blaze Heatness. This stage centers around finding these mechanical donuts. Or if you hate fun, you can call them the Nightmare Snakes. The problem is you fight these things like 5 times on the same stage, and all they do is move horizontally and vertically. The section where you feel like you're actually playing a stage isn't too bad, but this stage gets bogged down by repetitiveness. But at least it isn't the absolute bomb of a barrel, unlike what I think might be my least favorite level I've played in the franchise, Metal Shark Player. In my opinion, this stage just does the cardinal sin of video games. It makes you wait 1,000 years to go through this stage. The first section is bad, but at least it isn't as obnoxiously slow as the second half, as it's very mandatory to go through this very slow side-scroller. I know it's relatively simple, but just playing this stage makes me feel like I'm in purgatory. Oh, and I still haven't mentioned that every single stage has a back room. Yeah, none of these are good either. More times than not, they're just slightly more interesting or tolerable than the actual stages. Usually you'll jump through these diamonds to transport to back routes, You go through the back route, fight one of the 3 extra bosses, then get booted back to the stage select. It kinda sucks that you have to do the same stage all over again, but unless it's Blaze Heatnix or Metal Shark player, it isn't that bad. The extra bosses are Nightmare Zero, Hymax, and Dynamo. Being Nightmare Zero unlocks Zero, Hymax unlocks the gate stages, and Dynamo is just here to be fought. Nothing ever changes with this guy, I guess. But there's also another condition in stages. The Nightmare system. And with this, I just want to give the developers props with this game. Nowadays, games will have false advertising, but this game promotes the Nightmare system on the back of a box. And the game is very upfront with how bad it is, because Nightmare is a very accurate way to describe this mechanic. I really wish I could like the Nightmare system, because it's an expanded concept from X1. How it works is that stages will change based on the stage you last visited. Every stage has a max of 2 nightmare effects that can happen. For example, Chimera Mark will have this lights out effect if you visit Repin Center before going there. The thing is, I don't mind the stages being modified to be harder. Actually, now that I think about it, it could be interesting to have stage effects that benefit and don't benefit you. No, my problem is that I just don't like any of them. None of them are actual real challenges per se, more times than not they're just nuisances. I mean, yeah, I guess having silhouettes attack you is kind of harder, but it feels very inorganic, that I wonder why they even bothered. Well, the only exception is the nightmare bugs. These things block your shots and appear in stages where it's important to hit something, and up to 9 of these things can crowd you at once. Now that I've pretty much laid out why I don't like any of these levels on any level, I could just call it here, but I do have some more stuff I want to talk about. Nightmare viruses drop nightmare souls, and nightmare souls affect your rank. The higher the rank, the more parts you can equip. Up to rank GA, which gives you 3 parts for 1500 nightmare souls. I think that's very fair. It will be very easy to obtain that just by playing normally. But then there's rank PA that jumps to 5000, and then after that is rank UH, which, get this, is 9999 nightmare souls. Sure, it gives you 5 slots, but seriously, I have no idea who would want to be up Dynamo for hours on end. It's kind of sad to me how this game turned out, because I feel like a lot of this game's problems are just comes down to it being rushed. Which is probably why a lot of the levels in this game just feel so lame to me. And the levels feeling rushed also applies to the item locations. All of them feel so slapdashly placed, none of them feel like they were particularly thought out. Either they're just on the floor or placed on spikes. The body part of the shadow armor is the only fun thing to get. And then you know how I was talking about how good I thought the story was earlier? Well, the actual official translation for it is really awful. Which again, I can't blame the translators for it because there probably wasn't enough time to iron out all the kinks. So because of that, we have obvious typo errors and lines that completely change the context of scenes. To talk about translations, I thought it'd be good to do what I did for X3 and X5 and talk about the ROM hack. This is the last game where I actually know about a notable ROM hack for this game. Once again created by ACEDs, Mega Man X6 Tweaks is a ROM hack for X6 that changes a lot. Right off the bat, I have to applaud them for the amount of customization options you have for this. You can change how much lag your attacks have, if you want to be able to use shadow parts without having the full set, if you want the retranslation, and even more impressively, the creators of the ROM hack made new art for the characters that you can use. It even has different color palettes for the characters themselves and the text boxes. Another one of my favorites is that you can change the requirements of ranks. Personally, I lowered them way more. Also what I did is having X and Zero share stuff like ranks and also life and weapon energy ups. Now sure, you can argue that you can change too much, but you can change as much or as little as you want, so I don't really think it's a problem. Now here's the real question, does it save the game overall? And unfortunately, I just don't really think so. When playing through this mod, I still just didn't really find that much enjoyment in this game. Every stage is still relatively untouched. Still, I would still very much recommend playing this if you have any interest in it. I just want to restate that I did have more fun with this than the original version of the game, but I just didn't really find much enjoyment in the game. Now on to the end game. You know, it's kind of funny that after being high max you can go to the gate stages as early as you want, but it really is pretty much almost impossible without items and unlockables. The first gate stage is pretty alright. I don't like the side scroller segments, but I guess I can live with them. It's the second stage I really do hate though. The first section of the stage is just very obnoxious with spike sections and totem poles. There's 2 rooms of this, and when you die you have to go back to the first room. I don't really particularly like the rematch of Hymax either. Something interesting does happen though. Like in Extreme 2, X and Zero split up, and have 2 different sections of the level. Unfortunately, it was done in this game, so it's not very good. Zero section brings back Metal Shark Player's awful gimmick. Exit section isn't so bad, but there is a part that's pretty much impossible without an air dash, unless you have a jumper part. And then you get to the gate boss fight, and oh boy, it's something. You can't hit this boss without hitting his herbs back at him, but most of the time you can't do it without getting hit yourself. Every single color of herb has its own different effect. Some will slow you down, which will absolutely demolish your inputs. Some summon the nightmare virus that can still pass through geometry, and some will follow you. If you don't deal with the herbs in 2 seconds, get ready to be bombarded with these stupid side effects. And what's even worse is that he can still hit you by bumping into you or doing this attack by eliminating his platforms. Which, isn't great because you can only hit him when he's attacking you. And even when you can hit him, you have to hope that you don't get hit in the process. I just don't really like this boss, and as such, I kinda don't feel as bad about Gate dying in this game. Moving on to the last Gate stage, or I guess this is the Sigma stage now. I still hate that we refuse to let go of a boss rush, but it's surprisingly more tolerable here than it is in X5. After that, we finally get to the real final boss. The first phase I have basically nothing to say about. I mean, it's pretty easy, but I'm pretty sure it's designed to be that way. And then there's the final fight where he turns giant. He'll shoot lasers and stuff, but this fight is also pretty easy too. Just hit him when his mouth opens and he's done for. Like X5, there are 3 endings, but all of them are just determined by which characters you use. X has 2. One if you did unlock 0 and one if you did. There's also one for 0. Both of the ones for X are pretty much the same. X and the rest of the math encounters basically say that they should carry on with the fight, and that will stop the nightmare virus. Zero's ending sets up the Zero series, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be non-canon, so it doesn't really matter. So in case you somehow missed it, even though I've said it like a bunch of times in this video, I think this game is pretty bad. At best it's just kinda boring, and at worst it's boring and awful at the same time. As I've said, I really do think this game could have been one of the best X games, but I just don't really think the execution was really that good. It just really gets me thinking, had Capcom not told them to rush it out the door, what this game could have been. But I guess there's also the beauty in it that a lot of people actually like this game. To me, the Nightmare system does nothing more but be a minor inconvenience a lot of the time. But to some, it's an interesting mechanic that gives variety to stages. That's pretty much why I wanted to try to be more positive compared to some others in this video. Personally, I know what it's like to think a game that's hated isn't actually that bad. Or something a lot of people love, not too great, and get ridiculed for it. If you think this game is good, great, amazing, etc., then I think that's pretty cool. But I pretty much have nothing more to add, so I'll see you guys next time.